When a Filipino man and his young daughter vanished during a peaceful weekend sail, everyone blamed the sea. Until 12 years later, his wife received a mysterious photo proving their boat was still out there and uncovered a truth more chilling than death itself. The sun rose gently over the calm waters of Batangas, casting gold across the harbor as the day began. It was the summer of 2009, and the Dela Vega family was preparing for what was meant to be a peaceful weekend. Marco Dela Vega, a 42-year-old boat mechanic, had spent most of his life near the ocean. His hands were rough from years of fixing engines, his face tanned from countless days under the sun. The sea was his second home, and sailing was his escape from the noise of everyday life. That Friday morning, he polished the small sailboat he had lovingly named the Seraphine. It wasn't fancy, but it was built strong, steady enough for short voyages and family outings. Beside him was his 9-year-old daughter, Liana, a cheerful child with her father's curiosity and her mother's cautious eyes. She packed her backpack with snacks, a sketchbook, and her favorite red hairband. Marco lifted her onto the deck and promised they'd sail only for 2 days, exploring nearby islands and returning before Sunday night. His wife, Elena, watched them from the dock, smiling but uneasy. The sky looked perfect, but something deep inside her whispered a quiet warning she couldn't explain. Neighbors waved as the Seraphine glided away, its white sail glowing under the morning light. Marco waved back, unaware it would be his last time leaving that harbor. Hours passed, and the sea swallowed the boat into the horizon. Elena spent the weekend waiting, listening for the sound of the engine, expecting the sight of the sail returning at dusk. When night fell on Sunday and the waters remained empty, her worry turned to dread. The sea that once brought them peace now felt endless and silent. Something was terribly wrong. By dawn on Monday, panic had settled over the Dela Vega home. Elena hadn't slept since Sunday night, her eyes fixed on the horizon that refused to bring her family back. When the sun rose without a sign of the Seraphine, she called the Coast Guard. Within hours, rescue boats scoured the waters off Verde Island Passage, a stretch known for its unpredictable tides and dangerous undercurrents. The weather had been clear that weekend, leaving investigators puzzled. There were no storm reports, no distress calls, and no sign of mechanical failure. By midday, a small fishing vessel radioed in about floating debris. The search team recovered a broken wooden oar, a child's pink shoe, and Marco's blue cap, all confirmed by Elena. Each piece deepened the sinking feeling that something terrible had happened. Yet, despite days of searching, no wreckage or bodies surfaced. Divers explored the reefs and underwater caves, but the sea offered no answers. The official report listed the case as an accidental disappearance. Neighbors held vigils, newspapers ran brief stories, and within weeks, the incident was quietly forgotten. For Elena, the world didn't move on. She replayed every detail of that morning. The way Marco checked the ropes twice, the sound of Liana's laughter echoing off the dock, the calm sea that had seemed so safe. Nothing made sense. At night, she stood on the same pier, scanning the darkness as if they might suddenly appear. People told her to accept it, to let time heal the wound. But time didn't heal, it hollowed her instead. Somewhere in her chest, a small voice kept whispering that the ocean hadn't taken them. Something or someone had. And until she knew the truth, Elena refused to call them gone. 12 years passed like waves breaking endlessly on the same shore. Elena Dela Vega's life became a quiet routine of survival. She moved to Manila, rented a modest apartment, and worked at a small accounting office. Outwardly, she appeared composed, but inside, grief lived like a shadow that never left. Every birthday, every family gathering, she felt the empty space where Marco and Liana should have been. She stopped visiting the harbor for years, unable to face the sea that had stolen everything. Yet she never threw away their belongings. On a shelf in her living room sat Marco's watch, his old sailing journal, and Liana's framed photo smiling from the Seraphine's deck. Each anniversary of their disappearance, Elena lit a candle by the window. The 12th year felt no different, until a plain brown envelope arrived in her mailbox. There was no return address, only her name written in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a single photograph. Her breath caught as she stared at it. The picture showed the Seraphine, the same sailboat her husband had built, floating on calm, turquoise water. The name was still painted on the side, though the hull looked freshly repaired. On the back of the photograph, someone had written numbers, latitude and longitude coordinates. Elena's hands trembled as she compared the handwriting to Marco's old notes. It wasn't his. She traced the outlines of the photo, her mind racing. If the image was real, it meant the boat had survived, and maybe someone else had too. She spent the night searching online maps, matching the coordinates to a remote spot off Palawan. It wasn't part of any tourist route. Something about it felt secret, hidden. After 12 long years of unanswered prayers, the sea was finally speaking again. Elena knew she had to follow its call. Elena arrived in Batangas with a restless heart, clutching the photograph like a map to her past. She hired a fisherman named Raul, a man familiar with the far reaches of Palawan, and showed him the coordinates scribbled on the back. He frowned, warning her that the area wasn't on common sailing routes. Still, she insisted. The following dawn, their small motorboat cut through the waves, tracing the numbers that had haunted her since the envelope arrived. The sea was calm, yet Elena couldn't shake the feeling that it was hiding something beneath its quiet surface. Hours passed before a faint outline appeared on the horizon, an island, small and covered in dense green forest. It wasn't marked on any map. As they drew closer, the silence grew heavy, broken only by the rhythmic hum of the engine. The beach was deserted. No boats, no footprints, no sound of life. The air smelled of salt and decay. Raul stayed behind on the boat while Elena stepped ashore, her shoes sinking into the wet sand. She wandered inland, brushing through thick vines and broken branches. There, hidden beneath an overgrown palm, she found remnants of a campsite, charred wood, rusted cans, and a torn tarp flapping weakly in the breeze. Something caught her eye, a piece of driftwood with a name carved into it, *Liana star. The letters were shaky but familiar. Elena dropped to her knees, tears burning her eyes as she traced the carving with trembling fingers. Nearby, she noticed footprints half buried by time, smaller than her own. They led toward a clearing where a weathered rope swung from a tree, as if once used for play. The island felt frozen, untouched since that day. For the first time in 12 years, Elena felt close to the truth, terrifyingly close. Beneath the remnants of the campsite, Elena spotted a half-buried metal crate corroded by years of salt and rain. With trembling hands, she pried it open. Inside lay a waterproof bag coated in dust and sand. She unzipped it and froze. Inside was Marco's old leather-bound journal, the one he used to jot down repair notes and sea routes. Its edges were worn, the pages yellowed but intact. Her breath hitched as she opened the first entry. At first, it read like a family diary. Marco writing about the joy of spending the weekend with Liana, teaching her how to steer the sail, and describing how she laughed when the waves splashed against the hull. The handwriting was steady and full of warmth. But halfway through, something changed. The writing grew uneven, hurried. Marco mentioned spotting another vessel trailing them at dusk. He thought it was a fishing boat, but it stayed at a distance for hours. Then came the mention of strange static on the radio, voices faintly whispering his name before cutting off. He wrote that Liana had grown frightened and that he felt they were being watched, even after the other boat disappeared behind the fog. The final pages were smeared with water stains and ink marks. His last entry chilled her to the bone. It's not the storm I fear. It's her. She found us. There was no date, no explanation, only those final words. Elena closed the journal, her pulse racing. The her in the note felt like a door to a past she never knew existed. If Marco had written this, it meant their disappearance wasn't an accident. It was planned or forced. Somewhere out there, someone had known exactly what happened. The sea hadn't claimed them. A person had. Elena brought the journal to the local police, who reopened the long-cold case. The mention of her in Marco's final entry became the focus. Investigators traced old records, and one name kept reappearing in Marco's financial transactions. A woman named Rosa Manalo, from Puerto Princesa, Palawan. She had once worked with Marco at a repair dock years before he married Elena. Neighbors recalled her as quiet but intense, someone who kept to herself and vanished mysteriously around the same time Marco and Liana disappeared. The deeper Elena looked, the more unsettling the truth became. Bank statements showed Marco had been sending Rosa regular payments for nearly a decade. Each transfer was small, enough to go unnoticed, but together they formed a secret pattern of connection. Elena's chest tightened as she imagined what it meant. Marco, the man she had trusted completely, might have been leading a double life. Old photographs of the repair shop showed Rosa standing beside Marco, smiling in a way that felt far too familiar. When police visited Rosa's last known address, they found it abandoned, half buried in vines. But locals remembered seeing her on a nearby island with a young girl years after the supposed accident. The timeline matched too perfectly to ignore. Rosa disappeared weeks after the Seraphine was reported missing. Investigators began to suspect Marco hadn't drowned at all, but had been lured into a trap, perhaps by someone from his past who wanted more than he was willing to give. Elena's grief turned to confusion and anger. Had Marco planned to run away? Or had Rosa taken everything from him, including their daughter? The truth hung somewhere between betrayal and tragedy, and for the first time, Elena realized she might not have known her husband at all. Weeks passed with little progress until one evening, Elena received a call from a hospital in Cebu. A young woman had been rescued after a violent storm near the southern islands. She claimed to be Liana Dela Vega. At first, Elena refused to believe it. 12 years had buried her hope too deep to reach. But when DNA tests confirmed the match, the truth hit her with unbearable force. Her daughter was alive. Elena traveled to Cebu, her heart pounding with fear and disbelief. The girl waiting in the hospital room looked fragile and pale, but her eyes carried the same spark Liana once had. Liana's story unfolded slowly under the watch of investigators. She explained that she and Marco had survived the day the boat vanished. Their sail had been damaged during a sudden current shift, and a woman had found them drifting near Palawan. That woman was Rosa Manalo. She took them to her isolated island, claiming she would keep them safe until help arrived. Days became weeks, and soon, Marco realized Rosa had no intention of letting them leave. The island was her prison, a place hidden from the world. Liana said her father tried many times to escape. He built signals, left markings, even attempted to reach the coast by raft. But Rosa grew possessive and violent, insisting Marco belonged to her. One night, after another failed attempt, Marco didn't return. Rosa told Liana he had drowned, forbidding her to ever speak of it. Years passed in silence until Rosa fell ill. When she died, Liana found Marco's journal buried near the shore and fled using an old fishing canoe. Her voice trembled as she said she had always believed her mother was dead. Now, the truth had finally found its way home. After Liana's rescue, police organized an expedition to the remote island she had escaped from. Elena accompanied them, unable to rest until every piece of the mystery was unearthed. The island was eerily still, just as Liana had described. A tangle of trees, half-collapsed huts, and the faint traces of a life built in secrecy. Near the shoreline stood a small wooden cabin that had clearly been lived in for years. Inside, investigators found faded clothes, empty medicine bottles, and photographs pinned to the walls. Some showed Liana as a child, smiling weakly, while others depicted Marco, sunburned and thin, working on repairs around the island. His expression in each picture was distant, resigned. Behind the cabin, near a row of coconut trees, searchers uncovered a shallow grave. Inside lay a set of skeletal remains with a watch still clinging to one wrist, the same silver watch Marco wore on the day he vanished. DNA testing confirmed it was him. The discovery shattered the fragile hope that some part of him had survived. The evidence told a haunting story. Rosa had likely attacked Marco during one of his escape attempts, driven by jealousy and obsession. She buried him in silence and continued to keep Liana captive, weaving lies about her father's fate. In another box beneath the floorboards, police found notes and letters written by Rosa. They revealed a mind unraveling, filled with longing, guilt, and twisted love. She had written about keeping what was meant to be mine and her fear that Elena would take everything away again. It was clear she had planned every step, from luring Marco back to isolating him completely. For 12 long years, the island had hidden not just a family's tragedy, but the depths of one woman's madness and betrayal. The reunion between Elena and Liana was both heartbreaking and healing. When they finally embraced, it felt like the world stopped moving. Years of pain, longing, and unanswered prayers dissolved into tears. But even as they held each other, the weight of what they had lost was undeniable. Marco's death had left an unfillable void. Liana struggled to adjust to life beyond the island. The noise of the city, the speed of cars, and even the faces of strangers overwhelmed her. She spoke softly, as if afraid her words might break the fragile peace she'd finally found. Elena dedicated every waking moment to helping her daughter recover. Therapy sessions, quiet walks, and long nights of storytelling slowly built a bridge between the past and the present. Yet questions still lingered. Who had sent the anonymous photo that led Elena to the island? The authorities couldn't trace it. The handwriting didn't match Rose's or anyone connected to the case. It was as if someone, or something, had guided her toward the truth. Media outlets picked up the story, dubbing it the island's secret. Documentaries, interviews, and headlines painted Liana as a miracle survivor, but Elena avoided the spotlight. To her, it wasn't a story, it was a wound that would never fully close. One evening, Liana confessed something she had never told the police. Before she fled the island, she found a sealed envelope hidden beneath Marco's journal. Inside was a photograph of Elena standing on the dock years ago, smiling as the Seraphine departed. On the back, Marco had written, "If she ever sees this, tell her I never stopped trying." The words broke Elena completely, yet they also gave her peace. For the first time, she knew Marco's final thoughts had been of her and their daughter. A year passed since Liana's return, and life slowly began to find rhythm again. Elena moved back to Batangas, into a small seaside house overlooking the same waters that had once taken everything from her. Some days she would watch the horizon for hours, letting the wind carry her thoughts. Liana started studying marine biology, drawn to the very element that had defined her family's story. The sea, once a source of fear, had become a symbol of survival. But even as they tried to rebuild, one mystery refused to rest: the question of who had sent the first envelope that led Elena to the truth. Then, on a quiet morning, another brown envelope arrived in the mail. There was no address, no stamp, just her name written in familiar handwriting. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Liana standing by the shore, smiling peacefully at the camera. On the back, in faded ink, were the words, "Now she's safe." Elena's breath caught as she recognized the handwriting. It was Marco's. Experts later confirmed the note matched his journal entries exactly. But how could that be, when he had been dead for over a decade? Elena didn't seek answers this time. Instead, she framed the photograph and placed it beside Marco's old watch and journal. To her, it wasn't a mystery, it was a message. Perhaps Marco had written it before his death, leaving it behind for someone to find and deliver when the time was right. Or perhaps it was something beyond understanding, a final gesture of love carried by fate itself. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Elena whispered her thanks into the wind. The sea, once her enemy, had finally returned what it had taken. The silence no longer frightened her. It felt like peace.